In this story, when you hear this, turn the page. Paddington in the kitchen. One morning, Mr. and Mrs. Brown woke feeling ill, so they went straight back to bed. "The trouble is," said Mrs. Brown, "with Jonathan and Judy at school and Mrs. Bird on holiday, who's going to look after us?" "Don't worry, Mrs. Brown," exclaimed Paddington. "I'll do it. Bears are good at looking after people." "I'll make you a stew," he announced as he left the room. "Aunt Lucy always made me a stew when I wasn't well." "Oh dear," groaned Mr. Brown. "I think I suddenly feel worse again." Paddington hurried downstairs as fast as his legs would carry him. He was very keen on cooking. At least, he always felt he would be if he ever got the chance. He'd often watched Mrs. Bird at work in her kitchen, and although he'd never actually made a stew himself before, she always made it look very easy. He couldn't wait to have a go. First of all, he cut up some meat and put it into a saucepan. Then he added a pawful of carrots, some water, and several onions for good measure. After he'd put the saucepan on the stove to boil, Paddington turned his attention to the important matter of the dumplings. Mrs. Bird made very good stews. If he had any complaints at all, it was that her dumplings were a little on the small side. Paddington decided that his dumplings would be the biggest ever made. It was some while before the cloud of flour finally settled, but when it had, he added a generous helping of suet, followed by a jug of milk. It was when he came to stir the mixture that Paddington first began to feel worried. The spoon went into the bowl easily enough, but once in, it didn't seem to want to move. In fact, far from being able to stir the mixture, Paddington began to wonder if he would ever get the spoon out again. He didn't remember Mrs. Bird having so much trouble with her dumplings, and he began to wish he'd consulted one of her recipe books first. Paddington decided to make the best of a bad job. He took the saucepan of stew off the stove and tried to empty his dumpling mixture into it. But the bowl was a lot heavier than he'd expected, and no matter how hard he shook it, nothing seemed to happen. He decided the only thing to do was give the basin a sharp tap with Mrs. Bird's rolling pin. But he soon wished he hadn't. For a moment, Paddington toyed with the idea of hollowing out the dumpling mixture and making it into a new basin to replace the one he'd broken. But matters were suddenly decided for him as the lump of dough slid into the stew with a loud plop. But Paddington's troubles weren't over by a long way. Far from it being in the saucepan, half the dumpling mixture was sticking out of the top, and for some strange reason it seemed to be growing larger with every passing moment. In fact, it had grown so much, even his hat wasn't big enough to take it all. When the music stops, turn your cassette over.